At full speed, the world's fastest steam trains once sucked up thousands of gallons of water without ever stopping, refueling on the fly as rival railroads battled over who could shave minutes off New York to Chicago. Each mile meant burning 100 gallons, and every stop cost time and lost ground in the marketing war. So the giants did something outrageous. They tried to outrun the need to stop entirely. What did it really cost to keep these iron monsters moving? And why did this high-octane solution vanish forever? The answer starts with a crisis so severe it changed the fate of American railroads. A steam locomotive is a thirsty machine. Every mile it burns through 100 gallons of water, enough to fill a small swimming pool every hour. On a mainline run, a big Hudson or Pacific-class engine could empty its tender in less than 70 miles. That meant, even at top speed, the crew faced a hard limit, 50, maybe 70 miles before the tank ran dry. There was no way around it. If the water ran out, the boiler would overheat, risking an explosion that could tear the locomotive apart. For the railroads, this was not just a technical headache, it was a business crisis. Each water stop meant rolling a 1,000-ton train to a halt, waiting 15 minutes while hoses and towers did their slow work, then grinding back up to speed. On a route like New York to Chicago, those stops stacked up fast. Every lost minute was a lost ticket sale, a missed headline, a chance for the competition to pull ahead. By the late 1800s, the numbers were brutal. A Premier Express might need to stop 10 or 12 times in a single journey just to quench its boiler. The problem was not coal or oil, those could be loaded in bulk. It was water, always water, that held back the promise of non-stop speed. The engineers and executives knew if they could solve the water crisis, they could rewrite the timetable for the entire nation. The race for speed on America's rails was more than just an engineering challenge. It was a battle for prestige and profit. The New York Central and the Pennsylvania Railroad fought for the right to call their flagship trains the fastest between New York and Chicago. Every minute trimmed from the timetable meant more headlines, more passengers, and more business travelers choosing one line over the other. The New York Central's 20th Century Limited became a legend by promising a luxury ride that barely paused between the coasts. Their ads boasted non-stop journeys, a claim that electrified the public and sent rivals scrambling to match the feat. But behind the glamour, the numbers told a brutal story. A single water stop could erase the advantage of a faster locomotive. Each halt meant not just lost time, but lost momentum, forcing the train to claw its way back up to full speed, burning more coal and stretching the journey ever longer. Railroad executives understood that shaving even 10 minutes from a run could tip the scales in their favor. Schedules became weapons, and the trackside water pan was their secret ammunition. The ability to refuel at full speed turned a technical fix into a marketing goldmine. For the New York Central, it was not just about running trains, it was about running rings around the competition and making sure the world noticed. A track pan didn't look like much from a distance, just a long, shallow channel of steel set dead center between the rails, stretching out for nearly half a mile. But up close, it was a piece of pure engineering intent. 2,000 feet in length, 19 inches wide, and filled with water 6 inches deep. The surface stayed mirror still until a locomotive came barreling down the line. Mounted underneath the tender, hidden behind coal dust and grime, sat the scoop. It wasn't big, just a curved arm of solid metal shaped to catch the water and force it upward. When the fireman pulled the lever, the scoop dropped a precise 3 inches into the trough, barely clearing the bottom. That was all it took. At speed, the scoop cut through the water like a blade, sending a wall of liquid up the pipe and into the tank. No pumps, no moving parts, just raw velocity doing the work. The scoop's travel had to be exact. Too shallow and the tank stayed dry. Too deep and the scoop could snag the bottom, risking a bent frame or even a derailment. On preserved tenders today, you can still see the mechanism. A heavy shaft, a pivot point, and the battered metal lip polished by thousands of high-speed pickups. Custodians at museums sometimes demonstrate the motion, pulling the lever, watching the scoop swing down, then lock into place for that brief, violent encounter with the water. The pan itself was built to take punishment. Steel plates lined the channel, bolted to heavy timbers, and anchored in gravel. At each end, the trough sloped upward, so if the scoop was lowered too early or raised too late, it would ride up a ramp instead of slamming into solid steel. Every detail spoke of lessons learned the hard way. This was hardware designed for a single purpose: to let a 400-ton machine drink at full gallop without ever stopping for breath. At 45 miles per hour, the scoop becomes a weapon. The moment it drops, the train's own speed does the impossible. It turns a shallow puddle into a geyser. There is no pump, no hidden engine. It is just physics, pure and brutal. The locomotive barrels forward, ramming into the water so hard that the only place for it to go is straight up the pipe and into the tender. In less than 20 seconds, 5,000 gallons, enough to fill a backyard pool, are forced up and over the crew's heads. That is the magic number: 5,000 gallons and 20 seconds, all at a dead sprint. It is not gentle. The water does not flow, it slams. Imagine sticking your hand out the window of a car at highway speed, palm open. The wind tries to rip your arm off. Now swap the air for a wall of water and you get the idea. If the train is too slow, the water just sloshes around, never making it up the pipe. But hit the threshold, 45, 50, or 60 miles per hour, and the dynamic pressure builds like a battering ram. Any faster and the spray can tear gravel from the trackbed, sending clouds of ballast flying. Slow or fast, it is all about harnessing that violent forward energy. But there is a catch. As the tender fills in a rush, all that incoming water needs somewhere for the trapped air to go. That is what the vent is for, a simple stack sometimes no bigger than a milk bottle. If the vent clogs, the pressure inside the tank skyrockets. The old-timers called it ballooning the tender. In rare cases, the lid could blow clean off, coal and all, flooding the cab and soaking the fireman to the bone. Every fill was a race between physics and catastrophe. The difference between a perfect pickup and a disaster came down to inches, seconds, and the nerve to hold steady as the scoop hit the pan. White marker posts flashed by the cab in a blur, each one a command that could not be ignored. The first post meant eyes up, hands ready. The second was the signal, the moment to drop the scoop. There was no room for hesitation. At 70 miles per hour, the train covered 100 feet in a single second. Miss the mark, and you would either come up dry or risk tearing the scoop clean off on the ramped end of the pan. The fireman gripped the lever, waiting for the exact instant the marker lined up with the cab window. He would shout to the engineer, who kept one eye on the speed gauge and the other on the rails ahead. The teamwork was silent but absolute. The scoop had to drop just 3 inches, no more, no less. Too shallow, and the water would not rise. Too deep, and the scoop could catch, sending a jolt through the whole locomotive. The third marker was the lifeline. Raise the scoop fast. If you lingered, the scoop would slam into the steel ramp at the end, or worse, overfill the tank and send a geyser of water crashing through the cab. The margin for error was razor thin. There was no time to second guess, no chance for a do-over. Every pickup was a test of nerve, reflexes, and trust between the men in the cab. On a good run, it felt like hitting a target with your eyes closed, pure instinct and timing, measured in heartbeats. Every pickup run was a gamble. The scoop slammed into the pan, and the cab filled with a roar that drowned out even the engine. At 45 miles per hour, you needed every bit of that speed. Any slower, and the water just sloshed around uselessly, never making it up the pipe. But if the engineer pushed too hard, the spray could rip gravel right out from under the rails, leaving the track sagging and soft. There were days when you would see the ballast flying, the ground turning to soup behind you, and you would know the maintenance crews would be cursing your name by morning. The real terror, though, was the vent. 5,000 gallons of water did not just fill the tank, it forced air out through a narrow stack. If that vent ever clogged by coal dust, ice, or a stray rag, the pressure inside the tender would build in seconds. There were stories of lids blown clean off, coal scattered across the right-of-way, and the cab instantly flooded. I remember a night run where the fireman ahead of me missed his lift by half a second. The tank overflowed so violently it smashed the rear window and soaked him head to toe. He staggered out at the next stop, water streaming from his boots, cursing the scoop and the markers both. Passengers were not safe either. If you rode in the first cars with the window open, the spray would hit like a tidal wave. Clothes, bags, even hats swept off in a single burst. It was a running joke on the New York Central. Only the rookies kept their windows open through a pickup. For everyone else, the markers meant one thing: brace for impact and hope the crew got it right. Winter on the railroad brought a whole new kind of headache. Keeping a 2,000-foot trough from turning into a solid block of ice was a full-time job, one that never let up, day or night. The only way to keep the water moving was to run steam pipes under the pan, pumping heat around the clock. That meant burning more coal just to keep the troughs open, even when no trains were coming. There were nights when the wind howled off the Mohawk, and the only thing standing between a frozen pan and a delayed express was a pair of men with wrenches, lanterns, and a stubborn streak. The maintenance crews worked in shifts, bundled in oilskins and boots, checking valves, clearing ice, and listening for the hiss of escaping steam. If the heat failed or a pipe burst, the whole operation ground to a halt. The fuel bills ran high. Sometimes a quarter of the pump house supply went just to keep the pans thawed through February. Payroll was just as steep. Every pan needed a team on call, ready to shovel snow, patch leaks, or break up ice dams before the next limited came flying through. The water that missed the scoop didn't just vanish. It splashed out, soaking the ballast and turning the roadbed to slop. In spring, the ground sagged under the weight of passing trains, and every mile of pan meant another mile of track that needed constant attention. Crews dumped fresh gravel by the ton, only to have it washed away again by the next pickup. The work never ended. For every headline about a record-breaking run, there was an army of men behind the scenes, working through sleet and darkness to keep the miracle alive. Most of them never saw the inside of a cab, but without them, the pans would have frozen solid before the first express even left the station. In the 1950s, a new kind of locomotive swept across the American railroads. The diesel-electric engines did not just run faster or smoother. They could travel 500 miles or more on a single tank of fuel, barely sipping water along the way. For the men who had spent years fighting frozen pans and muddy track beds, the difference was night and day. The diesel did not need a track pan. It did not need an army of men to keep the water flowing or the steam pipes thawed. It just ran mile after mile without stopping. Railroads like the New York Central and the Pennsylvania Railroad moved quickly. The moment the diesels took over the main lines, the old water troughs became useless, expensive scars on the landscape. Crews arrived with torches and cranes, tearing out the pans that had once kept the 20th Century Limited and her rivals at the front of the speed race. By the end of the decade, almost every track pan in the country was gone. The heated pump houses fell silent. The wide, flat stretches of gravel that had marked the location of each pan were left to weeds and memories. Rail historians look back on this moment as a clean break. The age of spectacle gave way to the age of efficiency. The diesel's 500-mile range made the old rituals of water scooping obsolete overnight. Maintenance budgets shrank, schedules tightened. The spectacle of spray and thunder vanished, replaced by the low hum of engines built for endurance, not drama. Where once there had been a show, now there was only the quiet certainty of progress. Yet if you know where to look, you can still find traces of the old world. Along forgotten stretches of track, the land is oddly flat and wide for a mile or more. A ghostly reminder of the days when speed meant water and every minute counted. Today, the rails run silent, speed measured in data, not spectacle. As efficiency drives every upgrade, the cost is often invisible, lost wonder, and erased daring. The vanished water troughs remind us that progress trades drama for control, and sometimes the thrill is what disappears first. What are we willing to sacrifice for seamless travel? Drop your thoughts below. Your story is part of this legacy too.